Once again, it is I, the Nomad, coming to you live from the wastelands of the internet, coming to give you my version of the news. And we have lots of news. And by the way, for those who celebrate, and even those who don't, happy Easter. I realize I'm a little day early, but we got a day. Tomorrow is Easter Sunday. We'll have some stories concerning that. We will talk about that a little bit today as I go into the various multitudes of things as we go around the world. Let's start off in the worst things, shall we? As always, Hamas formally rejects Israeli ceasefire offer. Hamas has formally rejected Israel's latest ceasefire offer, saying it is prepared to immediately negotiate a deal that would see the release of all remaining hostages in return for an end to the war and the release of Palestinian prisoners. In a video statement, Hamas's chief negotiator, Khalil al-Hayya, said, "We will not accept partial deals that serve Benjamin Netanyahu's political agenda. We would rather our people die and suffer than to let somebody score political points as the Israelis." 59 hostages remain in captivity, and 24 are thought to be alive. Israel's latest offers involved a 45 ceasefire deal, in return for the release of 10 hostages. Far-right Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, I'm not trying to butcher your name, sir. I'm doing the best I can to pronounce it. Said it was time to open the gates of hell on Hamas. Hamas officials already indicated to the BBC earlier this week that they would reject the plan. Netanyahu and his government use partial agreements as a cover for their political agenda, which is based on continuing a war of extermination and starvation, even if the price is sacrificing all of his prisoners, said Hayya. He added the group was ready to immediately negotiate a deal to swap all hostages with an agreed number of Palestinians jailed in Israel and end the war. Hamas has said previously it would contemplate an overall deal to end the war, but the two sides are nowhere near any agreement that would bring that about. Gee, I wonder why. I know people who are looking at this in Israel and they look at their hostages and so forth, and they have to understand what is happening. This is what you call unwilling human shields. These are truly unwilling human shields. Okay? That's what these are. And it's unfortunate, but the reality is you got murdering psychopaths, in charge. Now, if you take a look at this picture here, and we'll go back to this again, with this poor a Palestinian woman, all right, well, I feel for you, but you shouldn't have elected Hamas. You should be demanding Hamas put an end to this. This is the reality. And yes, people are being harmed and people are dying, and it's horrible. But the reality is until Hamas is defeated, this is going to continue. Even if there's a ceasefire deal with Hamas, okay, it's only going to last so long before Hamas does something else. And don't misunderstand here. The ones who ended the ceasefire and everything else was Hamas to start with. They made a deal with Hamas. Hamas was supposed to return all the Israeli prisoners. Hamas failed to do that. Instead, decided to sit up there and make it a show, turn it into a freaking show after torturing and butchering these people. Celebrating as they sit up there and danced around the coffins that they were returning to the Israelis. That's the people you're dealing with. That's the kind of mentality of the people you're dealing with. And it's not just that they celebrate those kinds of things. They celebrate bashing the freaking heads in of toddlers. They target the toddlers to kill them. Well, but the Israelis are killing innocent children and everything else. No, the Israelis are trying to sit up there and kill Hamas. And where's Hamas doing? They're running around like the little cowards that they are and hiding behind these people. And they're not trying to actually fight the Israelis. Oh, no. They shoot missiles from residential districts so that they can then go down and then wave the dead bodies of their Palestinian brethren. I guess is the best way to put it. As an example, look at the atrocities that are being committed. And there's a difference between an atrocity and a tragedy. So how much you gonna have? How much you gonna have to tolerate? It's the question. Let's go to the next big conflict. This is live map showing you the reports going on in the Ukraine. And as you can see, all you have in blue are announcements, a prisoner exchange, and air defense. Air defense worked. Shot down 33 Shahed drones. Russia also launched 3 Iskander-M ballistic missiles and 2 anti-ship missiles Onyx and 3 anti-radar missiles KH-31Ps. Meanwhile, on the ground offensive, you have occupations here, and up here you have claimed occupations here. Massive AI drone swarms are going to be great. We'll see. We'll see. What you have, though, what this is showing me is the Russians are gaining ground. And it looks to me as if, even though they haven't accepted this, it looks to me as if the Kursk salient is almost finished. Oh, we've repelled 23 assaults. Well, okay. But if this village here, and the village is right here, by the way, if you do take a look at it, the village is right here. If that village is under Russian control, then these combat points are in here along this line. Hard to say, right? Unfortunately, unfortunately, the dying continues, the bombing continues in this civil war. All right. You see drone attacks all over the place here. You see airstrikes and artillery being used all along this front. And to me, it looks like they're making progress all along this line. Now, is this creating a bubble and assailant? Somewhat. But what's the upshot? Ukraine is 90% ready, 90% ready to agree to a peace deal. It's now up to the Russia official, says an official. Ukraine's minister told American officials that Kiev is 90% on board with President Trump's peace framework presented in Paris this week by Secretary of State Marco Rubio and two special envoys dedicated to ending Russia's invasion of its neighbor, a senior administration official told the Post Friday. The question now is whether Moscow, which has been frustrating Trump's attempt at hammering out a full ceasefire and peace agreement, will come on board. This week in London, we want to make a determination for a full and comprehensive ceasefire, the official said. The intent is to have discussions with the Russians and then say, okay, this is your best and final offer to find out where both sides are at. And once we get that, then the next steps will be determined, they added, insisting that Trump is ready to walk away from the table without Moscow's buy-in, placing responsibility for the conflict in the hands of Americans' European allies. They just made up a number, 90%. I agree. Meanwhile, Kiev defense Rustem Umerov and his colleagues will work through their remaining reservations about the peace plan, most of which surround where the lines would be drawn in a ceasefire that freezes hostilities. Okay, that is actually a big, a big sticking point because we don't know what Kiev is actually demanding. If Kiev is still demanding you have to pull completely out of the Donetsk region and Crimea and all these other areas, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen, and everybody knows it. The only way that the Russians get beaten in this attack is if the United States moves in militarily. Not just with supplying weapons, if we actually use the U.S. military. That's the only way that the Russians lose this. Now, do you want that kind of escalation? Is that kind of escalation worth American lives? That's the real question. The real question in all of this has always been how great to America, from Americans' involvement, how great a threat is Putin to America? And I'll tell you right now, he's not. He's not a great threat. A 90% threat. He's not. I'm sorry. It's look, and what I mean by that isn't that they're allies or they're good guys or they can be reasoned with or anything else. I'm not talking about that at all. I'm talking about our interests. Why is it in our interest to be in the Ukraine? Well, it protects NATO. How? The idiot Europeans want to sit up there and expand NATO into the Ukraine. So how is this protecting us? And I'll be honest with you, even with the threat of what Putin has been doing, even with all of that, how are the Europeans acting? Are they acting like he's a threat? Let's be serious here. Are the Europeans the ones who have the most to lose if they're wrong about this? Are they acting like Russia's a threat by still working with them, still not putting full sanctions on them, still buying Russian gas and oil? Are they saying that though he's a real threat? It doesn't look like it. Doesn't appear to be. So that being the case, why the hell should the United States do anything in this area? Now, I'm a firm believer that we should pull out of NATO, but not for the reasons many people think. We need to pull out of NATO because, quite frankly, we don't have allies in NATO. When we look around at the big three, right, in NATO, aside from the United States, outside of the United States, you end up with Britain, you end up with Germany, and you end up with France. Those are the big three countries. Then you got some mid-tiers like Spain and Italy. And when you take a look at their actions, okay, and what they have done, and how seriously they take their defense, which is not serious at all, shouldering this burden should be shouldered 90% in Europe because it's a 90% European problem. And yet they're acting like, well, it's not a big deal to them. We'll just use America forces. So since that's your attitude, since that's the attitude of our supposed allies, that the United States needs to shoulder all of this, then we need a new alliance. We need to pull out of NATO and create a new alliance. And whether that's with Great Britain and Poland, okay, or and other willing countries, that's fine. But the EU, the EU aren't our friends. The EUs aren't our allies. They're not acting like allies. They're just acting like asshats. That's what they've been doing. And quite frankly, I'm a bit tired of it. That's the reality. I'm a bit tired of this. We don't need supposed allies like this. From the Financial Times. EU issues U.S.-bound staff burner phones. All right, over spying fears. The European Commission officials headed into the IMF and World Bank spring meetings advised to travel with basic devices. The European Commission is issuing burner phones and basic laptops to some U.S.-bound staff to avoid the risk of espionage, a measure traditionally reserved for trips to China. Commissioners and senior officials traveling to the IMF and the World Bank spring meetings next week have given the new guidance according to 4 people familiar with the situation. They said that the measures replicate those used on trips to Ukraine and China, where the standard IT kit cannot be brought into the countries for fear of Russian or Chinese surveillance. They're worried about the U.S. getting into the Commission systems. The treatment of the U.S. as a potential security risk highlights how relations have deteriorated since the return of the evil orange dictator Donald Trump. Trump has accused the EU of having been set up to screw the United States and announced a 20% so-called reciprocal tariffs on the bloc's export. He later halved for a 90-day period. The fact that they are worried about us spying on them, all right, shows a couple of things. First of all, the International Monetary Fund is worried about spying from the U.S. You should be more worried about us telling the IMF, go pound sand, and you're not getting another dime. Acting like adversaries is a great way, right, to prove Trump right. And it won't be, oh, we spied on you. Though quite frankly, we will. Right? I'm going to be really upfront. If you're a foreigner, if you're a foreign agent in this country, if you're a foreign agent, you're subject to being spied on. Period. Deal with it. The fact that they think that they might be targets indicates they're trying to do nefarious shit. Okay? And that's what they're worried about. They're intending to do nefarious shit. That's why they're worried. All right? Well, if the U.S. spies on... What is it that the U.S. needs from the EU? There is nothing the U.S. needs from the EU or the IMF. Why would we spy on them? Only if they were going to make backdoor deals that screw over America. The fact that you're worried about Americans spying on you now tells me you intend to screw over America and make backdoor deals with our enemies, like China, which is what you've been doing. The Europeans are going to get a very hard lesson coming forward in the future because their countries are going to screw them over bigly, as Trump would put it, because they're going to make deals, supposed deals, with China, and then find out that China doesn't live up to their obligations. They're going to find out what the United States already knows. That China is a communist country that screws over people. It doesn't actually help lift up anybody. And it's not there to be a freaking true partner. And the fact that they're trying to run to that person over becoming a partner with the U.S., and they're like, so-called reciprocal tariffs. They're not so-called. They are there. If those tariffs were not in place, okay, if our agricultural industry was not completely banned strictly for the purpose of protecting their own little countries. Oh, but America has GMO. Oh, America has all this other stuff. Oh, American food is all horrible. Whatever. Then deal with the tariffs. The tariffs are coming. And if you don't think that, if you keep screwing around, you're going to find out. Just like these groups. To keep Canadians coming, Palm Springs hangs love letters in its streets. 40 red banners attached to light posts on the city's main road are hard to miss, each one hanging outside of hotels, restaurants, bars, art galleries, and other attractions. Features an image of a Canadian flag shaped as a heart. Officials in Palm Springs, California, hope the signage makes the desert resort city's position clear amid tension between the United States and its northern agitator that it stands with the Canadians. Of course they do. They're Hollywood. The food could be better, though. Or to be honest, yes and no. Okay. German food, Russia, European food. If you ever go over there, okay, they talk about how great their food is. Their food is not that good. All right. I'm not saying it's bad, okay, but it's not any healthier, all right, than American food. Now, does American food have a lot more garbage in it? I just want less chemicals and dyes. Okay, yeah, I understand that. Okay, but you're dealing with two separate situations. To think that they don't have dyes and chemicals in their food is myopic, because they do. They just pick different dyes and chemicals. In fact, they have chemicals in their food and so forth that we don't have that could because we banned it or because it's not as effective. A lot of American dyes in the food is something that we could definitely do without, because dyeing the food doesn't really help anything, right? It does not change anything aside from the customer's appeal of, okay, this is what I'm looking at. The other things, the other chemicals like preservatives and so forth that we utilize, Some of them are very effective and good. Some of them aren't. It depends on it's a how do I call it? It's a trade off. It's a trade off. You have the fact is that a lot of the chemicals that we have are there for one purpose only. A lot of the chemicals that are added in food are there for as a preservative, so that it stays fresh longer. Do we need all that? When you think about the size of this nation and you think about where the total amount of food is being produced and where it's coming from, yeah, we kind of do. Do we need as much of it as we do in everything? No. Do we need corn syrup in everything? No. Could we use sugar instead? Yes. Should we be using processed sugar? See, why are we using, people forget this. Why are we using corn syrup as a sweetener? A lot of people are like, oh, because it's cheaper. Nomad, it's cheaper. That is not why. That is not why, folks. There was an intentional push in this country to say that pure cane sugar from Hawaii was horrible and that corn syrup was a better alternative. And who brought that news to us? Who was the one pushing that? Of course, the same idiots who are now telling us, oh, the corn syrup is bad, cane sugar is better. The government. I remember those days. So yes, we have corn syrup. And yes, it serves a dual purpose now because corn syrup is used so much for, right? Excuse me. What you have is an overproduction of corn in the country. Now, could we produce other things on these farmlands? Does it have to be corn? Does it have to be soybean? Does it have to be all these other things? No, it doesn't have to be all those. Okay? But once again, this is what happens when you deal with governmental subsidies. The unintended consequences are now the corn market is so important to the American agricultural industry that just admitting and trying to go back to pure cane sugar, where pure cane sugar can't grow everywhere. That is very true. For people who say that it can't grow in America, they're wrong. There's plenty of areas that it can grow. All right. If you take a look at, for example, and I'm not saying it's necessarily easy, but you could create sugarcane fields in Louisiana and in the southern part of Texas. All right. You could very easily do it. Not advising it. Not saying it's a good thing. I'm just saying it could be produced more in the United States. And it's not the only way we can get that kind of raw sugar from. We can do it from sugar beets as well. But once again, there's a trade-off there. But to listen to the people talk about how bad corn syrup is, these are the same freaking idiots that came back and told us that corn syrup was so much better than just regular raw sugar, and we needed to remove the amount of regular raw sugar in our diets. Supreme Court temporarily pauses deportations under the Alien Enemies Act. The Supreme Court Saturday morning paused the deportation of immigrants potentially subject to the Aliens Act, or the Alien Enemies Act, freezing action in a fast developing case. Notice this word, in a fast developing case involving a group of immigrants in Texas who say Trump's administration is working to remove them. The court's brief order drew dissent from conservatives such as Samuel Alito and Clarence Thomas. Attorneys for the Venezuelans at issue in the case filed an emergency appeal at the High Court on Friday, claiming they were at immediate risk of being removed from the country and had not been able to provide and had not been provided sufficient notice to challenge their deportation. You're a Venezuelan. I have no problem deporting you. You are an enemy. You've been just ask Maduro. He says America is a great enemy, just like Iran and Iraq, or Iran and Russia, I should say. So this pause, by the way, only affects this small group. It doesn't affect all deportations. And see, the way they put this, though, with the headline, is they make it sound like, of course, that it's stopping all deportations. And the Trump administration is going to come right back and say, you don't have any authorization, all right, to tell us not to deport these people. And they don't. It is annoying. It's very annoying. But sooner or later, there has to be a realignment, all right, in the judiciary, because the judiciary has been out of control since the Miranda ruling, folks. I have already said this before. The Miranda ruling was one of the stupidest freaking rulings on the planet. Sipping margaritas is the latest example of Bukele's propaganda machine. The Salvadorian president Nayib Bukele has a long history of using social media flaunt his power to flaunt his powers, and once again stepped into the fray on Thursday. Bukele has a long history of using social media flaunt his powers. Learn how to write, dude. Ozzy Prayabara, learn how to write or get a better freaking editor. Now, I'm not saying that everything has to be perfect, but you're supposed to be the Washington Post, for crying out loud. Democracy dies in darkness. You can't even speak it. Right? The audacious style is once again on display Thursday when Bukele shared photos of Senator Chris Van Hollen visiting Kimar Abreu Garcia, a Salvadoran illegal alien and former resident of Maryland, who is married to a U.S. citizen and was deported last month, all right, to Bukele's terrorism confinement center known as CECOT. Bukele mocked the visit, telling his followers that Van Hollen and Abreu were drinking margaritas in a tropical paradise of El Salvador. It's not just that, all right? This whole thing has now blown up, and now they're trying to scramble, the Washington Post especially, is trying to scramble to protect this jackass when it was found out that this guy, one, is a member of MS-13. Two, we have other evidence that they listed to give it, right, after they made such a spectacle of themselves. And three, the son of a bitch was already under court orders as his wife tried to get a restraining order from him. Oh, he's just a loving husband, and just dots her eyes whenever he has a chance, right? The guy's not coming back to America. And the Fourth Circuit's commentary, regardless of their commentary, which is absolutely insane if you ever read it, isn't going to fix it. It's not. Because it shows everybody just how far gone our judicial department has become. How far the judiciary has lost it. Oh, sure, a suspect, the guy with the gang tattoos. New York Attorney General Letitia James accused of possible mortgage fraud. No, it's not possible, dude. It's real. New York Attorney General Letitia James has been referred for criminal prosecution for alleged mortgage fraud related to a Virginia home and a New York property. William Pulte, director of the Federal Housing and Finance Agency, FHFA, wrote a letter obtained by CBS News New York to U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi, alleging that James has, in multiple instances, falsified bank documents and property records to acquire government-backed, notice the word, government-backed assistance and loans, all right, and more favorable loan terms. This is not a joke, folks. All these people who think that, this is just retribution. No, it's not. They have the signatures. They have the documents where she signed, where she claimed her father was her husband. Because married couples get better terms because it's a more stable relationship. That's how loans work. They work on the aggregate. And that's how they issue these things. What's more is she also lied about an apartment size that was 5 units rather than 4 so she could avoid it being transferred from a residential style loan to a commercial style loan, which she wouldn't have qualified for. Then there's the fact that she claimed, oh no, this is going to be my residence, that I'm going to use this as my residence in Virginia, when in fact she can't do that as Attorney General in New York. She was framed by the white man. And I'm not sure you can call Trump white. I mean, he's orange, so. Isn't that what they always tell me? She's going to jail, folks. And the state of New York needs to sit up there and suspend her completely right now. Because what she's doing now is poisoning. The fact that she's there is now poisoning every case she's touching. But they won't. You're right. It's sad. But they won't. New pre-spree charges for OnlyFans, but I don't even know. New P-spree charges for OnlyFans model. The OnlyFans model, who was recently arrested for spraying her urine on more than $1,500 worth of merchandise in a New Hampshire grocery store, oh my God, right, has been hit with 5 more criminal counts for alleged pee spree at the hotel records show. In a series of criminal mischief complaints filed on April 14th, Kelly Tedford, 24, is accused of damaging an assortment of items at a Marriott in Keene in January. Investigators allege that Tedford, who uses the handle of Kinky Kelly on OnlyFans, urinated in a hotel room's air conditioning unit and relieved herself on a comforter, blanket, and curtains, and on a Bible. This woman is demented. Right? She is also charged with defecating on the floor and placing the waste into a toilet tank, a frat boy favorite known as an upper decker. At the same time, the new misdemeanor counts were being filed. Tedford was named in an indictment charging her with felony criminal mischief for allegedly contaminating items at a Monadnock food co-op in Keene. Tedford alleged targeting of the grocery store in February resulted in the business suffering a loss of in excess of $1,500 in destroyed merchandise and cleaning costs. Investigators contend that Tedford recorded her vile acts for her $15 a month OnlyFans page, which is no longer online. Her page described her as a submissive pixie, fetish kink friendlies, extremes too. Her account also offered subscribers custom content and paid sexting sessions. Tedford's OnlyFans account noted that on her prior page, Petite Princess got banned. What a God! As degeneracy continues to reign. Oh my God, lady, get some help. Get some help. Japan defense vessels stop at China-funded naval base in Cambodia. Japan's maritime self-defense vessels made a port of call at a China-funded naval base in southwestern Cambodia on Saturday, marking the first such visit by a foreign vessel since the base was expanded. The visit by the minesweeper tender Bungo, all right, and the minesweeper Etajima to Ream Naval Base, to Ream, I guess it's Ream Naval Base on the Gulf of Thailand comes amid U.S. concerns over China's potential expansion of its overseas military presence. The port call was made as Japan continues to pursue free and open Indo-Pacific in the face of increasing assertive China. The port of call, Japanese Defense Minister General Nakatami expressed hope that the visit will help the newly expanded base make the newly expanded base more open. The ceremony was held earlier this month to mark the completion of the expansion work at the base in the Southeast Asian country, supported by Beijing. Following the upgrade, Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Manet said all countries are welcome to use the facilities. China has been expanding its influence in Cambodia, with its naval ships anchored on rotation at the base near the contested South China Sea. Actually, this is actually pretty. I would play Minesweeper on it for fun. um, this is actually a not what people think it is. Okay, this is not a slap at America. This is a push by the Japanese to show more force in an ever expanded region. And Japan is fully capable, okay, of increasing its defenses and dealing with threats throughout the Pacific. Whether they have the willpower to do it or not, well, that kind of remains to be seen, to be honest. Meanwhile, dun dun dun, exclusive how China's military is quietly gaining control of the Pacific. From Newsweek. China has quietly extended its military reach far across the Pacific by building dozens of ports, airports, and communication projects at key points in the vast region that could shut out the United States and its allies in the event of war, a new report says. The projects appeared civilian in nature, but were in reality strategic nodes stretching about 3,000 miles from Papua New Guinea immediately north of the U.S. ally Australia to Samoa, which lies about 40 miles away from the U.S. territory of the American Samoa in Polynesia, according to the new study made available exclusively to Newsweek. The remote, scattered islands of the Pacific were once crucial to the United States warfighting strategy in World War II, and they could play a role in the next global conflict too. Ding, 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 ding. The growing logistics network in the South Pacific, built mostly by Chinese state-owned companies with ties to its defense sector, was being overlooked even as Beijing's rivalry with the U.S. deepened and as Chinese overseas base ambitions elsewhere drew attention, said Domingo Kuai Yang, an assistant research fellow at Taiwan's Institute for National Defense and Security Research, an institute funded by the government of self-ruled Taiwan, which China has threatened to invade. All right. First of all, I'm not underselling this, okay? But China is building these bases in an effort, yes, to counter the United States. Its ability to do so requires force projection, however. And while China is gaining in that region and becoming more, how do I say this? Capable, I guess is the best word, more capable of force projection, it's still a long way off. To be honest, force what's required for force projection within the Pacific, okay, is not what a lot of people think it is. And China is a ways off from being able to pull it off. Why? Because they're communists. That's the main reason. And why do I say that? Because of the massive amounts of corruption that is inherent in the communist state. People talk about how corrupt our country is. And there's a lot of truth to that. There's no doubt. But it hasn't seeped into the society yet. I've noticed that word. Where the acceptance of corruption is normal. But in China, corruption is accepted as normal. In Latin America, corruption is accepted as normal. We're getting there, but we're not there yet. So, what can China do? All right, China is trying to create a projection force to allow it to invade Taiwan. Okay, China is not ignorant of what it would take to invade Taiwan. Taiwan would be a difficult nut to crack, and you need to be able to use force projection. The problem that China has isn't that they could invade Taiwan. They could. But to invade it successfully, you've got to do it quickly. And while you're doing the invasion, while the invasion is ongoing, you have to prevent other actors from successfully defending Taiwan, coming to Taiwan's aid. And they're not there yet. Because long term, to hold the island, you have to have a continuous logistics to hold it. You have to have a supply line, a continually mobile supply line that can't be interdicted. Is China ready for a war with the United States? No. Can they be? Yes. Do they have? Would a war between the United States and China be devastating? Yeah, it would. No doubt. Is it a concern? Yes. Is it the sky is falling? No. China is already dumping American treasuries in an effort to keep its economy afloat, which is why it's doing it, because the trade sanctions are hitting China hard, very hard. So we will have to see how all this plays out. How Sweden's multicultural dream went fatally wrong. Gee, I wonder why. To show me just how bad gang crime has become in Sweden, all journalist Diamant Salaiu has to do is forward a few mobile phone pictures. At first glance, they look like spam, written in garish fonts and promising large sums of money there to be earned. It's only on closer examination that the purpose of the pistol and skull emojis become clear. These are so-called murder ads posted online by gang leaders offering bounties to anyone willing to carry out hits. Isn't that lovely? All types of jobs are available, reads one, promising up to a 1 million corona or 78,000 pounds. All right. Age doesn't matter, adds another, explaining why many Sweden's new contract killers aren't hardened hitmen but children. Part of the problem, some say, is that Swedish law dictates that anyone aged under 15 is too young to be prosecuted. We have so many child soldiers and nobody can count anymore, says Saliu, right, an investigative reporter for SVT, Sweden's answer to the BBC. There are kids as young as 13 being arrested. Barely a week passes in Sweden today without a teenager being arrested for such a hit, keeping Salia extremely busy and the public in grip of a national crisis like no other before it. A soft-spoken former tabloid journalist, a 41-year-old who could be a character for a Scandinor novel, all right, shining light on society's darker corners. The body count on his beat, though, is far higher than the Stig Larsson novel and holds out little prospect of a satisfactory ending. When you have women being raped in Sweden, brutally raped, held down and raped, who then come back and go, but I don't want to sit up there and out him because he was an immigrant. He might get deported for raping me. You have a problem in your society. It isn't just the immigrants. It's your whole society is gone. You've lost anything close to morality and common sense. You think that these immigrants are just poor freaking people. They're not. This here shows a little line there showing how much violence, number of victims in total, right, for the various surge in murder rates, and how many are using firearms. Now it looks like there's a dip in uh, in 2024, but they only have 10 million people. They don't even. That's not even the size of New York. New York City. Think about that. That's not even the size of New York. They constantly tell us about how bad America is, America's murder capital, things like that, blah blah blah. We have about 10 million or so people here in Arizona, and we don't have 45 murders by guns every year. Last year, don't get me wrong, we have murders. We have murders. But these people and these things, now you're beginning to learn. And all you did was import one immigrant group. One. They just did mass importation of one immigrant group, and all of a sudden things got blown out of control. One. In America, you know how many different groups we have? Significant groups we have? Meanwhile, in positive news, the UK Supreme Court rules trans women can't be defined as women. Ding, 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 ding. Britain's top court ruled only those born female can be considered women in a landmark judgment that excludes transgender women from the legal definition and paves the way for tighter limits on female-only spaces and services. Well freaking done. But of course, we're talking Britain, so I'm sure it'll be overturned sometime later. Just trying to keep it real. Just trying to keep it real. Hollywood. David Zaslav's shaky Hollywood empire. In a declining industry, the aspiring mogul has defied the odds, for now, based on an unlikely set of skills. Luck. He just happens to be timed well. David Zaslav is a member of a regular Zoom call that includes Howard Stringer, 83, who once ran Sony, Tom Freston, 79, who once ran Viacom, Walter Isaacson, 72, who once ran CNN and Time Magazine, Graydon Carter, 75, who once ran Vanity Fair, Richard Cohen, 84, retired from his longtime column at the Washington Post, Nick Pileggi, 92, the Goodfellas screenwriter, Ken Alta, 83, the Boswell, and to a former generation of media moguls, and Kenny Lehrer, 73, a financial backer and co-founder of the Huffington Post, now retired from his investment businesses. At 65, Zaslav, currently the CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery, is the youngest person on the call. The group has met in some form and with shifting cast for many years. At Zaslav's suggestion, it solidified into quite a defined club and a regular appointment during COVID, 10 a.m. every Friday. Health issues form a subtext here, though given that all are men of a certain age and sensibility, the full details of, for instance, their trips to the Mayo Clinic might not be directly addressed. The social gathering, a shooting the shit opportunity in one member's or more or less humble brag, the kibitzing among men whom have known the same people and shared much of the same professional dramas over the years. But it's impossible to ignore friction of the group that while few members, if any, in the characterization of one of them, get up in the morning anymore and go to the office. Yeah, look, Zaslav is on his way out. All right. He came up at a time when things were he came to the fore when things were breaking his way. But Zaslav, like a lot of these clowns, is a freaking Marxist leftist, and they started putting agenda, all right, foremost in all of their work. And it's begun to show, which is why the entertainment industry as a whole, including Bob Iger's Disney, is collapsing around them. That's the reality. It's also happening to other people like this. Boardroom eruption over the future of Harley Davidson. How a dispute over the next CEO, remote work, and DEI led to a director's resignation and his public battle to oust other board members. Boardroom drama usually happens behind closed doors, but at Harley-Davidson, the fight to define the future of the iconic American motorcycle brand has spilled into public view. On Wednesday in March, Harley's directors assembled in a conference room at the Loews Chicago O'Hare Hotel to interview 3 candidates for the company's next chief executive. They began searching for a new CEO this year after the current leader, Jochen Zeitz, 62, privately told them that he was ready to retire. He didn't privately tell them they were ready to retire. They frickin' drove him out because they found out that he's more interested in pushing agendas for the Harley Davidson motorcycle. And as a result, Harley Davidson motorcycles took their major hit here in the U.S. because their brand has now been sullied. And it's going to get worse. Good morning, Ms. Murder. How are you doing? There. A little fan service for you. Well, the fan service really. But DEI is killing Harley Davidson. It's not helping matters that they closed a bunch of U.S. plants, and guess what? They're now getting tariffs. There's a lot of reaction that's happening as a result of all this. A lot of reaction that's going to be as a result. Harley Davidson, the star-spangled beacon of U.S. manufacturing, faces slowing sales of bikes that can cost more than $40,000, an aging customer base, and no clear way forward. So let's jump on the bandwagon of DEI. That'll bring them in. Folks. Over to Britain. That's kind of British story. A British tourist faces a hellhole U.S. jail term after he caused a wrong-way crash that left 2 children critically injured and fled the country. A British tourist who allegedly used a fake passport to flee the United States after injuring 2 people in a wrong-way crash is now facing years in jail. Rob, 22, pled guilty to driving a rented BMW in the wrong direction down a one-way street in Rockland County near New York City in July of 2022. He drove past 2 no-entry signs before traveling the wrong way on the road and colliding into a 2017 Chevrolet Cruze, which then smashed into a 2021 Dodge Charger. 2 brothers, aged 6 and 7, were rushed to a hospital after the crash with injuries. The younger boy suffered a critical head injury, and the older brother spent a week in the hospital. Their mother, Jacqueline Paquet, who was driving the Cruze, was left with a shattered wrist. At least 4 people in the Dodge Charger were also suffered injuries in the collision, the prosecution claims. Rob, then 22, fled the scene with other passengers in his vehicle, whom have been identified as his brother and 2 cousins, allegedly unaware that anyone had been hurt in the crash. There is Happy Easter to you as well, Miss Murder. I'm pretty sure that the person in question was drinking. The fact that they fled the scene is the problem. Okay? You do something stupid, and I suspect, and it could be the alcohol was involved. Okay? But most likely, it wasn't. Now, this guy fled back to Britain, which adds to the charges, all right? Only to be captured by the British and repatriated back to the United States. Now, it took them how long to extradite him from Britain? I don't know, but because this happened in 2022. But it seems to me he got extradited a hell of a lot faster than one Julian Assange. Just pointing that out there. Conspiracy theories. Dun 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 dun. Space riddle. Conspiracies. swirl after Blue Origin door gaff as video shows the hatch opened from inside before Katy Perry climbed out. Wild conspiracy theories have emerged over the historic all-female Blue Origin crew into space after an apparent gaffe was spotted in the landing video. The 6 women, including pop star Katy Perry and Jeff Bezos' fiancée Lauren Sanchez, traveled just beyond the edge of space aboard Blue Origin's reusable Shepard rocket before the capsule parachuted back to Earth. You can see the women of the capsule. The Blue Origin rocket carried Perry, blasted off into space and land back. As well as Sanchez and Perry on board the capsule were the morning show icon Gayle King, NASA astronaut scientist Aisha Bowe, civil rights activist Amanda Nguyen, and film producer Carrie Ann Flynn. So you're a civil rights activist. It must be really profitable to be a civil rights activist and be able to climb on board a frickin' spacecraft that costs you, $300,000 a trip? They spent 3 minutes in pure weightlessness before the craft safely parachuted back and landed in Texas. Footage captured the space shuttle. That's called the space shuttle now? The space capsule, making a soft landing back on Earth after its historic mission. However, viewers spotted a gaffe in the clip that sparked a slew of conspiracy theories that slammed the mission as fake. In the video, Jeff Bezos is seen wrenching the door open, or is wrenching open the hatch, from the outside to let the all-woman crew out of. Don't you love how they got to keep them? The all-woman crew, the all-woman crew, the all-woman crew. Dozens of skeptics have. However, footage from just moments earlier clearly shows the capsule door being opened from the inside before being hastily shut. So basically, they ruined Jeff Bezos' welcome home. Let me open you in and welcome you back to Earth. You have a bunch of women in a small little capsule together for who knows how long, stuck together before you launched them into space. For 3 minutes of weightlessness, when they came back to Earth, do you think they want to sit next to one another? Guys wouldn't do that. Okay? I'm just pointing this out. Sitting calmly after you land back on Earth. Okay? And if I'm not mistaken, Gayle King, when she came out, kissed the Earth. Look, getting in a rocket and being launched toward the upper atmosphere and into space, it would be exciting. It would be something that if I had that kind of disposable cash, I would do. I'm not going to lie. It would also be terrifying and wonderfully terrifying, and I would love every minute of it. When I landed back on Earth, I would be like the astronaut who came out of the first space shuttle. If you ever go back and watch the first space shuttle landing and see that guy, all right, it is wonderful because you're excited, you're pumped, you're like, yeah, I did this, right? I would not do it. I would. From the Philippines, Catholic's agony as he's nailed to the cross for the 36th time in a Good Friday crucifixion. Ruben Inaja, N.A., I guess it's N.A., all right, 64 from the Philippines, has shared his devotion to God for the 36th time after an agonizing crucifixion. He carried out the act for Good Friday. Shocking images show a man being pinned to the cross in an ultra-realistic display as he volunteered to be crucified for the 36th time. Ruben Inaje, 64, has decided to carry out his annual act again in San Pedro Cutad, Pampanga, all right, for Good Friday. He has endured the crucifixion for over 3 decades and went ahead with it this year despite previously saying he was getting too old. However, he finds it difficult to turn down the requests from villagers who have families suffering from ill health. This year, he nailed himself to a cross with 10 other men in the sweltering heat. Last year was an extra important for Rubin as he highlighted the war against the Ukraine. He said at the time, if these wars worsen and spread, more people, especially young and old, would be affected. These are innocent people who have totally nothing to do with these wars, he added. This is why I always pray for peace in the world. Look, might sting a little. When you meet people who are truly devoted to their faith, and this man obviously is, as he sees it, he's truly devoted to his faith. To go to such lengths, okay, nailed to a cross 36 times every year on Good Friday, being nailed to a cross. Look, I'm not saying that this is something that people should do, but you gotta respect the man. That's someone who's willing to suffer for what he believes. And I think that's one thing that people have forgotten. In order to truly prove your love for anything, you have to be willing to make a sacrifice. Just putting it out there. I hope God is cool with me not trying. I'll be honest with you. If the rules are you got to crucify yourself or have yourself crucified, you know, I think we're all in a lot of trouble. Right? Just put it out there. I think the vast majority of us are in a bit, or have a bit of a worry. Okay. Is he Christ? Is he Moses? Superman's religious and ethical undertones add to his mystique. What the heck is this? From the AP. Superman was born a Kryptonian, raised Methodist, and sketched into existence by two Jewish teens in the 1930s Cleveland. Faith and morality are in his DNA. Really? Is it a bird as a plane as a mouse? There are no overt religious references in Superman comics, but over 8 decades, he has been viewed as a divine entity, a savior figure, his sacrifice Christ-like, his will to lead as strong as Moses parting the Red Sea, and his compassion akin to Buddha, all right, the enlightened being who guides Buddhists on. I know I didn't pronounce Bodhisattva because, to be honest, I can't pronounce it very well. All right, on his spiritual path. While scholars and comic book writers and fans alike are struck with by the religious undertones in Superman comics, they say what separates Superman from the ever-growing pack of superheroes is his singular ability to bring hope in a hopeless world. Look, this is all an attempt to create hype for the new Superman movie. And the new Superman movie has a lot of controversy from people because superhero movies have taken such a slack. And I'll be honest with you, the superhero movies have taken a shellacking because they became agenda-driven pieces of garbage. They cared less about the story and more about pushing the agenda. The agenda became the story. It's not superhero comics. Okay? It's hard to get into Superman in a certain sense. Why? Because Superman was always someone who is above the frailties of normal people. And what I mean by that is not that he didn't have difficulties or anything else, and not that he didn't have, things to overcome, but his method of overcoming them was always to be at the epitome of what it is to be the best a human being could be. Now, anymore, they're trying to destroy that because it's Hollywood, but that's just what it is. Russia. We were talking about the peace deal possibly before. Well, here it is. Here's another little thing. Russia asked the U.S. to allow Boeing jet purchases in exchange for a ceasefire. Russia has approached the United States requesting permission to purchase Boeing aircraft, reportedly in exchange for a ceasefire in the Ukraine, Bloomberg reports. According to the outlet, Russia has asked the U.S. to allow it to buy Boeing planes as part of negotiations to end hostilities in the Ukraine. While the request is not a formal precondition for the ceasefire, it could become part of a broader sanctions relief package if the deal is reached. Bloomberg notes that U.S. officials say any economic concessions can be discussed only after the ceasefire. Since the start of the war, the U.S. and its allies have frozen around $280 billion in Russian central bank reserves and blocked access to American and European markets for Russian airlines. Following its invasion of the Ukraine, Russia's aviation sector has struggled due to its lack of access to foreign aircraft and spare parts. Moscow is also publicly requesting the lifting of sanctions on its flagship carrier Aeroflot, which has faced major disruptions due to a shortage of planes and components. American companies, including Boeing, shut down their operations in Russia after the invasion, worsening the situation for the country's airlines. Not sure why they want Boeing. I do. Think about it. Just consider it. Just think about it slowly. Who canceled all their Boeing contracts recently? China, because of the trade war. Russia looks at this and goes, "We'll buy the Boeing aircraft and then we'll sell them to China." It's a way around the sanctions. That's what this is. Just putting it out. Just trying to demonstrate how these things work in the world, folks. Georgian battered beau over sex denial. A Georgia woman is facing a pair of battery charges after she attacked her live-in boyfriend for refusing to have sex with her, police alleged. Tabitha Lee Grooms, 35, is accused of leaving her beau, Carlos Rodriguez Grace, 30, bloodied after a June 25th confrontation in their Augusta home, which the couple shares with Grooms' 66-year-old mother. According to a Richmond County Sheriff's Office report, Grace had a bite mark on his left arm and visible scratches to his face, head, and neck, which were bleeding slightly when detectives interviewed him. Grace told investigators that the Grooms were mad from earlier in the day because he would not have sex with her. After a night of boozing, grooms returned to the residence and announced that she had effed everyone else because Grace would not eff her. All right. Deputy Philip Clark reported. Following the proclamations, groom allegedly scratched and bit Grace, who was seated on a couch. Guys, don't put your dick in crazy. Keep it in your pants. Don't put your dick in crazy. ATM. Oh my god. On another semi-religious document story, scientists discover all humans come from the same mother who lived 200,000 years ago in Botswana. If someone were to stand on a pulpit and say that all humans come from the first woman Eve, and that there is an indisputable biblical truth, we would probably pay little or very little attention. But if a team of researchers who were to publish in a prestigious scientific journal, Nature, that mitochondrial DNA proves that all of today's humanity comes from a single woman, we would certainly not be so quick to dismiss it. The findings are not even current. The famous article, Mitochondrial DNA and the Human Evolution, was published in 1987 and was the first ever study to uncover the family tree of human evolution. Moreover, it came to a puzzling conclusion. All human beings come from a single woman who was quickly christened Mitochondrial Eve. Inside every cell of the body, there is an organelle called mitochondria that has a DNA distinct from that of the cell itself. It has 37 genes of its own and is descended solely from the mother's mitochondrial DNA. Scientists sequenced DNA in individuals from all over the world, analyzed their mutations, and came to a universally accepted conclusion that the original mitochondrial DNA came from a single individual, a woman. Well, seeing as mitochondrial DNA comes from women, to make a statement like that, it's kind of silly in my opinion. The study of genetic mutations that this mitochondrial DNA has undergone has also served to understand human migrations throughout history. So, Adam and Eve came from Botswana. All right. Apparently, according to this study. Who am I to argue? Okay. They say that she lived in southern Africa in what is now Botswana some 200,000 years ago. The problem is that the earliest evidence of Homo sapien goes back to 300,000 years. So before that woman, there were many other women. So how do we understand this? You don't. Okay, first of all, uh, the attempt to assess mutations, okay, is guesswork. And so the idea that, this is a flawless study and that has no flaws in it is just kind of silly. Okay? I just pointing it out. But if you read the whole thing, initially they come back to this conclusion. All right, two stories left. Absolutely fabulous. Fabulous feathered friend. Loose peacock found wandering in Philadelphia. Animal rescuers in Philadelphia responded to an unusual situation where a resident found a wandering peacock on their front step. AACT Philly said on social media that rescuers were called out Thursday on a report of a loose peacock in the city. This fabulous feathered friend was spotted strutting through the city like he owned the place. Like he had brunch reservations and had no time to waste. You know it's going to be that kind of day when your morning meeting gets interrupted by a wandering peacock in your front step. The group said the peacock was safely captured and brought back to the rescue. They did not say whether the bird's owners had been identified. Look, peacocks are pretty. They're pretty creatures. There's no doubt about that. They're very very nice. It would is it Katy Perry's. It missed her from her space capsule flight. Is that what you're trying to say? I have no idea. I mean, they're pretty birds. Talking to people, they're also pretty tasty, from what I'm told. I've never eaten one. Not sure I would want to. Right, but she's got that. She's got a peacock son. Uh, the see one wandering around the streets. I am surprised you don't see it more because the bird is so beautiful. You would think that a lot more people would raise them. All right. Now it is a fairly large bird, so you're not going to really keep it as a house pet. But considering that they're also edible, I'm surprised that they're not on more dinner tables. Quite frankly. Final story of the day: an alpaca. See, Philly has peacocks flying around. New York, however, has alpacas on the loose. Police in New York said that a report of a llama drama in Western County turned out to be an alpaca chuos, all right, when the loose animal was correctly identified. The Westchester County Police Department said on social media that officers responded to a 10 a.m. Thursday report of a llama on the loose in Cisco Avenue. Turns out it was actually an alpaca. Who cares? Okay. I mean, that's fine, right? I mean, people who want to be literal, I guess it's okay. But it's still a pretty good initial description compared to what we sometimes get. The officers were able to corral the alpaca and soon learned that the animal had escaped from a trailer near the Hotel MTK. Excuse me. Oh, my goodness me. I got to yawn. All right. Pat Riley Way in Mount Kisco. The alpaca was then spotted near Land Rover dealership in Kisco Avenue. Maybe it was looking for an upgrade to its ride. The alpaca was taken to the Green Street precinct, where it was soon reunited with its owner. We're taking a guess here, but we think that there's some kid's birthday party, and it went on as just as planned. The Post said. Um, it could be a party. It also could be. I mean, there are a number of people that travel around with exotic animals, for lack of a better term. Right? Some are wild. Some of them are like alpacas, which are tamed. Um, but they do this to show kids, all right, in areas that are rural or don't see these kind of things. That these animals that they read about and they hear about and so forth on TV, they're real. They can come and they can touch them, right? And kids love animals as a whole. It's right. So it's nice. It's they do get away like any animal, right? Like any wild animal. I don't care what wild animal it is. Eventually, it gets away. The idea that we have total control over everything is just should be obvious. All right, when we can't even keep pigs in a cage, when you can't keep dogs from escaping, for crying out loud, when you can't even keep paramecium or bacteria or viruses from escaping. It should tell you that our view of control is quite substandard when it comes right down to it. But that's the last story, everybody. Hope that you all enjoyed the show. Thank you all for coming out. I'll talk to y'all later. Bye-bye, everybody.